lang ilang taon.
These animals can carry infectious diseases.
What if we could go wherever we wanted without leaving the house?
男性を女性が支えるもの。
They should never have really stayed on board.
You're watching Asia First, checking in on markets in the Asia Pacific again. We are seeing a mixed bag, but Singapore that's just joined the trading session is joining in the party that we saw on the Japanese index Nikkei 225, which is up about 0.6%, piling on gains, 0.75% higher now. The STI itself 0.6 stronger. Australia also pulling back into the green, while South Korea languishes in the red. While investors will be keeping an eye on the Chinese solid growth out of the coronavirus slump, analysts predict there the continued rally for copper prices, and the benchmark copper price on the London Metal Exchange in early May hit a record high at more than $10,000 a ton. That's double what it was just a year ago. Prices have remained above that 10,000 mark since, and analysts say they're not surprised. Investors say copper is turning into an attractive commodity, especially as major countries push for decarbonization. This boosts demand for electric vehicles as well as wind and solar power generation stations. Copper is mainly used to make electric cables and is indispensable for infrastructure builders. China is the world's biggest copper buyer, consuming half of the global output, and the impact of the pandemic has done little to soften demand for the red metal, mainly due to China's speedy recovery. Across Asia, shares in mining and trading companies have soared on rising demand for copper. In fact, in recent months, the mining sector has outpaced tech stocks. Still, some long-term investors would rather stay away, citing risks in putting their money in a sector that depends heavily on economic conditions and market cycles. Some caution as well on Bitcoin, given the volatility that's carried into the weekend on top of a roller coaster week, which whipsawed investors with double-digit percentage moves. Bitcoin slipping almost $3,500, and other cryptocurrencies like Ethereum, Dogecoin, Ripple's XRP all seeing double-digit losses now too. The world's largest cryptocurrency fell more than 16% yesterday, down more than 50% from its highs this year. And last week was one of the rockiest ever for Bitcoin after a string of negative headlines. Prices swung as much as 30% in each direction on Wednesday alone. But even with these gyrations, Bitcoin is up more than 250% in the past year. The volatility follows U.S. and Chinese authorities moving to tighten regulation and tax compliance on cryptos. Beijing reiterated on Friday that it intended to crack down on crypto mining and trading behavior as part of an effort to control financial risks. Bitcoin also fluctuated because of tweets from Elon Musk. He helped fuel bullish sentiment when Tesla bought $1.5 billion worth of Bitcoin, but he also dealt a blow to the cryptocurrency earlier this month after announcing the suspension of accepting it as payment for Tesla vehicles. And analysts say weekends tend to be particularly volatile for crypto assets, which trade round the clock. Before the latest turmoil, Bitcoin's weekend swings this year averaged roughly 5%. Epic Games' monumental courtroom battle against Apple is expected to end later today. Both sides are expected to draw the curtains on this legal battle in a debate-style format where the judge will drill each side with questions about their cases. Even though the trial is set to conclude today, the judge warned last week that it could take weeks or months until a decision is made. Apple is accused of exercising too much control and restricting competition, within its App Store. At the heart of the case is the so-called App Store tax, a 30% surcharge Apple collects on purchases made through the App Store. Over the weekend, Apple CEO Tim Cook took to the witness stand where he spent 2 hours trying to persuade the judge that the App Store's policies are aimed at keeping customer data private and safe from malware. So what have we learned so far? Well, the first week of the trial was dominated by why the Fortnite creator challenged the tech giant. Much of Epic's opening argument focused on the idea that Apple is fortifying a walled garden designed to lock 1 billion iPhone users into their integrated ecosystem. It likened the App Store to a car dealership, demanding 30% from every gas station after the car has been purchased with no payment alternatives. Apple hit back, saying the fees it collects from developers are necessary for covering expenses related to security. That's a claim that Epic says is overblown. So is Fortnite a game or an app? Is an iPhone just another gaming device or a tightly controlled ecosystem? Well, the second week of the trial focused on these questions, accompanied by expert testimony debating whether smartphones are interchangeable with other video game platforms. The third and final week of the courtroom drama saw a star witness take the stand, Apple CEO Tim Cook. Epic pushed Mr. Cook about other motivations for its commission, juicing Apple's profits. Now, in a preview of what lies ahead, the judge also grilled Cook about the profits Apple reaps from game developers, which she says appear to be disproportionate. Now, we're hours away from the end of the trial, but there's still no indication as to where the gavel might fall when the case comes to a close. Blank check companies are losing their appeal for startup firms eyeing a listing. Investor disappointment over the performance of such special purpose acquisition companies or SPACs are making some startup CEOs more skeptical. SPACs gained popularity last year as a mechanism for startups to raise money quickly with fewer regulatory hurdles than a traditional IPO. But it's been a bitter reality check for many such listings. Wall Street Journal reports a fund that tracks companies that have gone public through SPACs have fallen more than 30% since February, and investors are showing their disappointment after many startups struggled to meet their growth targets immediately after listing. About 50% of SPACs that completed a public listing through a merger in 2020 missed their revenue forecasts, and 42% saw their revenue decline in their first year as a public company. Now, the share prices of tech firms that have gone public through a SPAC route also faltering. The average price of 44 tech startups that went through that route from January last year to April this year has declined almost 13%. That's compared to stocks of traditional IPOs, which have faltered roughly 11%. Now, enthusiasm for SPACs waned after securities regulators in the U.S. stepped up scrutiny and announced new accounting mandates last month. Still ahead on Asia First, disrupted and devastated. It's been more than 500 days since COVID-19 emerged, and the world has never been the same since. How much more can people take? We'll speak with a psychologist to find out.
From the top stories in Asia,
a quicker, portable way of testing for COVID-19 in just 5 minutes.
to breaking news in the US and Europe,
US President-elect Joe Biden is set to formally introduce his top economic team.
with an eye on markets opening across the world.
Wall Street's major indices all closed the month with double-digit percentage gains.
It's the one bulletin that offers you a global perspective. World Tonight, daily, on CMA.
Biodiversity is booming, which is inviting for some local foragers and farmers who embrace edible wildlife.
We're the largest organic banana grower in Singapore.
This is jam.
Amazing. So the mulberries are from the garden.
No, that's delicious. Singapore is ramping up conservation efforts locally and across the region.
I really do love reptiles and finding out about them, so I really love my job.
Building must relate to the lives of the people.
目前还是一直要创新，